Hi, well, we are back to the Ask the Doctor Be Good podcast, and we have a real treat for you today. We have John Payton, who is a truancy judge in Collin County. We're going to learn a little bit about him in a few minutes, but first I want to remind people, while we're getting started, if you are watching this live, please post L in your post, and if you're watching this later on in the replay, please type R, so that we can know who's live and who's watching it later. And if you love what you're hearing, let us know and share this with others, please, while this is going on. Okay, so John, first let's talk a little bit about you and me, because we go back a long ways.
Long ways.
Yes, you are the youngest acting truancy judge in Collin County, or anywhere in the world, really, right? And that is in the Guinness World Book of Records and still is a standing fact.
Correct. Yes, got elected in 1990 as a Justice of the Peace as a senior at Plano East Senior High School.
Yep, and I remember that because I had a foster child that was going to school there at that time, and you came over to the house with him, so I knew you back when.
That's right, way back when.
Way back when. And so you're an interesting fellow just from your background, but you've done a lot of interesting things since then. You have done a lot of work in the when I say truancy area, it's more than just understanding the law. You have taken the practice of how to help families and kids not be truant. And so we're going to delve into that a little bit more so that people can understand not only the impact that you've had on families, but what we can continue doing to help families today. All right, so before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what the attendance requirements are. And I found a document by the TexasPublicSchool.org that speaks parent English, as I call it, about the attendance requirements. So good attendance is important for many reasons. Your child receives the maximum benefit of education by being in school every day, and numerous studies show that a strong link between academic performance and consistent attendance works. So you hate to have to put this in writing, but okay. Because attendance is so critical for the quality of your child's education, Texas has a compulsory attendance law. So let's talk about what that is. State law requires that children attend school each day that instruction is provided. The law applies to kids 16 to 19. Now, if you voluntarily bring your kindergartner who is 5 before September 1, then these laws apply to you. You don't have to bring your child before the age of 6 to first grade, but if you do, even in pre-K, these laws apply to you. And that's something we've had to explain to parents, especially new parents. We start with kinder, and when a parent who really loves her child brings their kindergartner for the first few weeks of school, they tend to, and we had this last year, John. I wish we had a parent who brought child late every day because she needed more cuddle time.
Well, of course.
And
yeah, more
like
cuddle
more
time.
Cuddle time.
Yeah.
So that's why we're having to really go this extra mile and let parents know about the attendance laws, because we're having some issues with parents really needing to understand the law. There are, of course, few exceptions. If your child goes to private school or homeschool in a GED program, then these same laws don't apply. But there's still, in any time a child is in any public school setting, there are attendance laws that apply. There are excused days. If you observe a religious holiday, we had the Jewish holiday not too long ago. We had some kids and staff out. That's excused. Attend a required court appearance, like when they come see you, it's excused. Serve as an election clerk, doesn't happen often. I've not had that, but it could apply. And then attend a health care appointment, which is what we usually have. Kids who are out for a dentist or a doctor appointment. So we do excuse other things for like personal illness, death of an immediate family member, and medical treatment. Okay, those we all know are okay. Excessive absences. So it says here that both the child and the parent are responsible for unexcused absences. Sometimes we have families who accept that and some that don't, and we help them with
yes. And I get to see those.
Yeah. So yes, even if your child is 16 years old and skips class without you knowing it, you're still responsible. And that's something that many parents are have to have explained in different ways. After too many unexcused absences, the school is required to notify a parent. And of course, every school has their way of doing it. We send a letter after 3 excused or unexcused absences, and then if they have 10 or more, that's a conversation in person, because we very much notice the impact of a child not being there on their grade. Frankly, there's a direct correlation.
Oh, there is.
And we have parents, and maybe you can also talk about tardies. We have parents who consistently bring kids late to first period and then wonder why they're not passing first period. Direct correlation.
Right. A direct correlation, absolutely. And, many times, especially the elementary school level, you use that time as your spontaneous reading moment or your math moment. Yes. And what I mean by that is that it's not necessarily a specials, but it's the one thing you do is you get ready to warm up for your day.
The morning routine.
That's right. And so you lose your morning warm-up, and then you come into the classroom and everybody's already got their morning warm-up done, everything's put away, and here you are with your backpack, your lunch, and you're disheveled. And as a child, you're looking around feeling bad because, oh no, everybody's staring at me.
Well, and you're right about that. At Legacy, we have restorative practice, which means every teacher must pick up at 7:45, because we start school at 7:45 in the morning, and do what's called restorative practice circle, where they get in a circle, they talk, they either have a prompt or they talk about how they feel from 1 to 4, they pass the power tool around, and it's a way of teacher being able to connect with each and every student and get a feel for, oh, little Johnny said he's a 4, he feels like a 4, what am I going to do to get him to a 1? I'm going to be cautious around him. And so it's my way of gauging the temperature of the class, so to speak. And so when a child's not part of that, especially on a regular basis, he or she misses that chance to form a relationship with the teacher and the class, and it harms the class community. So that's been very difficult for us. Even though we're in our 3rd year, we still don't have parents who value us doing that and needing to build that relationship. Let me just mention that last important law around attendance, and that's the 90% rule. So in addition to compulsory attendance law, districts are required to enforce the 90% rule, which states that students in grades K-12 must attend class for 90% of the time that it's offered to receive credit or a final grade. And that sounds like a lot. We go 180 days. That's 18 days. If you miss 18 days, you either go on the principal's plan or you don't get credit. And so that sounds like a lot of days, and for a lot of parents that would never happen. But it does happen, unfortunately, for a few percentage of our families. And so that's when we come talk to you about how we can help our families avoid that more, and what practices families can do along with what practices schools can do to make that better for our families. So let's start with the first question. How have truancy laws changed in the last few years?
Well, and I think that first and foremost, Dr. Be Good, I love that, by the way. I think that first and foremost, I think families should always be aware of where the law is. I always appreciate the parent talk, and I know our parent speech, and I know what you mean by that. We need to make sure that everybody can understand, because there's so many different languages in the world, and not even foreign. I'm talking about there's economics language, there's law language, there's business language. There's so many different languages that we all speak different legalese per se, right? And so I think it's important to understand where the law is. Section 25 of the Education Code is going to give you your admissions and your attendance laws for the state of Texas. 25085 and then after is going to be extremely important. If you want to really understand what the law says verbatim, that's where you go for that in the Education Code. Compulsory attendance, the Compulsory Attendance Act, and I'm glad you said pre-K, is a part of that. ESL is a part of that. If you put your student in at 3 or 4 years of age, because there's a program for that, and it's a public school program, you're bound by the Compulsory School Attendance Act. And so you have to follow the rules of attendance. You don't get to just come and go as you please. And so that's one major step that hasn't changed in the law. Some of the biggest changes that have happened is that in compulsory school attendance, parents have become even more responsible for the attendance of their child. And I'm not against that. I've always believed that a parent should be held accountable for their child's attendance. I've always said that a 16-year-old doesn't come out of the womb screaming, I can't wait to fail high school. They don't do that. They have to learn that process, right? Mm-hmm. And that process is learned by what we teach them as their mentors, their parents, their guidance. That's what we teach them. So they normally have learned that. There's normally an elementary school connection, middle school connection to poor attendance at the secondary level. And it just is a continuation. And so the Compulsory School Attendance Act changed from 1991 when it was written for students, because before 1991 there was no law in regards to a child or to a student. It was always the parent. Okay? So in 1991, a representative out of Arlington was met with the DAs and the sheriffs and police chiefs of the state of Texas and said, you got to do something. They're stealing. They're going into garages. They're walking around malls. This is a problem. We have to have some teeth. So they wrote it where it was a Class C misdemeanor. There could be a fine imposed, but then the court could impose sanctions or methods of rehabilitation is what I called them. Court order a child into counseling. Court order a child to be drug tested. Court order a child to enter drug treatment, behavioral management treatment. Order them to go to school as just one more element to what the parent could do, okay? Then if they violated that order, then there were sanctions that could come about. Well, in 2014, Senator Whitmire out of Houston spearheaded the changes that we had, where basically he threw the baby out with the bathwater. And he says, we're going to restructure the entire thing. So the truancy application for kids was completely thrown out, and then the family code resurfaced with this new law. And it basically has a student now stand alone. What do I mean by that? Okay, before we would send off a subpoena to a parent to bring the child to court. We don't do that anymore now. Now both get notified that they are to be in court, okay? If the parent doesn't show up, but the student does, I can proceed. If the parent shows up and the student doesn't, I can't proceed.
No matter what age?
No matter what age. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they're 18 now, because as you read, it's now 19 years of age, right, whereas before it was 18, right? So it doesn't matter. They're 18 years old. They've moved out on their own, which there's no law against. They've got their own apartment. They've got their own car. They've got their full-time job. Mom and dad and child get to come to court for truancy. And again, if the parent doesn't show up for court, but the child does, I can go forward. But again, vice versa, I can't. So that wasn't the law back then. That's a major change, major shift, where it really identifies the fact that the student is almost, like I said, on an island where they have to do their own thing. We now, instead of what was inherently true, which was a child has always had the right to an attorney. A child has always had the right to not incriminate themselves in open court, right? The child has always had the right to enter a plea in open court in front of the judge and then have that plea play its way out. Whether it's guilty or not guilty, it didn't matter. The child had that right. Well, now we have to specifically go through the rights with the child. And we have to ask them, do you wish to waive these rights? Do you wish to reserve them? And so those rights are. Now I've got to tell them, you have the right to hire a lawyer. I can't appoint one for you, but you can hire one. Do you wish to waive that right? Do you wish to reserve it? Or do you wish to hire one? You have the right to a jury trial. Well, that was always inherent, but now we have to go out and we have to say that. And there's 6 rights altogether that we have to go through. We have a handout that we have to give them that explains those rights, okay? And then we give them 5 days to understand what they're reading, understand what they have. I can tell you that since 2015-16 school year, when this all began, not one student understands what they're reading. I go through the explanation, and I have simplified this thing down to so easy to understand that they still look at me and say, because they'll tell me, did you do it or not do it? True or not true? First of all, kids go, you mean guilty? No, that's not the law anymore. Now it's true means you did it, not true means you didn't do it. So another significant change where we understand what guilt and not guilt is. These students are confused about what is true and not true. Why am I saying that? Well, because that's what a senator out of Houston wanted you to say. So how do you wish to respond? Well, they'll say, well, I did it. So true. Okay. So then I'll ask them, do you wish to waive your right to a jury trial? Because I have to ask. The law requires it, right? and it shouldn't. It should be by admission of guilt or trueness, then we should automatically waive a jury trial because they don't need one. They said they did it, right? But I got to ask them. And they look at me and they go, I don't waive that. And I'm like, are you sure? Well, what does waive even mean? And so I have to explain what waive means again. This is what it means when you're waiving a right. I'm not waiving it. So do you want me to go ahead and set you up for a jury trial then? Well, no, I did it. Okay. And this is a constant conversation. There's a reason why, and I always tell kids this. You may have been a naturalized born U.S. citizen, but you're not a citizen yet. You become a citizen when you're 18. That's when you have the right to vote, and that Bill of Rights applies to you, and that Constitution applies to you. And we know this because of the Vernonia School District decision by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1994, where it says not even liberty, freedom applies to a child under the age of 18 that's not been emancipated. That you are under the control of your parent or guardians no matter what, even your ability, i.e., to come and go at will. You are the property of your parents. And again, like I said, the U.S. Supreme Court's already ruled on this in 1994, so there's no question or debate about it. And I love it when I get other people that come at me, well, of course a child has a right. Not in those sense, they don't. They have laws, juvenile laws that protect them, that make sure they're insured the right to an attorney, a jury trial. We have a process for them. And so it's interesting to go through that dichotomy with these children because they don't get it. It's like, well, wait a minute. Okay, I have this, but I don't understand it. And trying to explain it to them has been very confusing.
No, but you're teaching government. It's like going to government class.
Pretty much.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
They missed that when they missed
They do. They do. They do.
So what impact have these changes in the law made, if any?
Major impacts. School districts have had to change the way they approach attendance altogether because one of the other changes, of course, is that after 3 unexcused absences or the sort, right? And we're going to talk about what the sort means here in a moment. There's a BIP that has to be written. Well, now, if you're a special education teacher and you say BIP,
we know what that is. But
when I'm in attendance and I tell you BIP, then you're confused because it's not what a BIP is under special
intervention
plan. It's not.
Oh, okay.
But it is for attendance. And it's like, why couldn't you just call it an attendance contract? Because that's what it is. And so you're supposed to put truancy measures into place to help prevent them from committing truancy again. And it's required. The law doesn't say may. It says you shall, after 3 days, do a BIP. Well, I know that you guys are just flooded with money and have nothing but plenty of money to hire all these people to handle all of these idiosyncrasies of the law.
I think you're confusing us with that fancy Catholic high school down the road.
Yeah, I think I am. And so even they're smarter. That's why they're a Catholic high school. They don't have to hire a truancy officer. Right. But the point is that all these requirements that are, I call them unfunded mandates. And so therefore you don't even hit kids at 3. The law says you shall. You have to do it.
Well, we send a letter.
Well, you hope, but you got to do the truancy prevention measures and sit down with them and have them sign it. Then you have to make a good faith effort to have their parents sign it. Mm-hmm. Okay? And then hopefully that stops it all, right? Well, it doesn't, sadly. The behavior continues. And once they get to 10 unexcused absences or the sort, and again, we'll define sort here in a moment, then you move forward with truancy. And the law doesn't say you may. It says you shall file after 10 unexcused absences. And schools aren't doing that because, A, they don't have the staff to do it. Again, unfunded mandates is what they've created. The caveat in it, and this is another change in the law, and I do like this part of it, is the discretion it's given judges. So if the school district comes in and says, hey, we've done these truancy prevention measures, we filed, but now we're seeing the results of our truancy prevention measures, then the court has the right to say, you know what, we're going to put everything on hold, and we'll see how things go. And if the truancy prevention measures work, then we'll dismiss it altogether. So it's nice to have that discretion. But again, we're missing the shalls. And so to define the sort, it would mean that unexcused tardies, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to count as well. Not attending tutorials. The education code's very clear that once a class is required during the day, okay, that can be expanded. Your school day can be expanded to an additional class period to help you with EOCs, standardized testing, or the base curriculum, right? Mm-hmm. So if you miss tutorials, that's part of compulsory school attendance as well. And so that you can be filed on for missing tutorials. Now, after hours school is being used for makeup time. So Saturday school, Friday school. And schools, other schools have put people in their Saturday schools that are actual teachers. And on one Saturday, they'll have science, math, and another subject matter where they can be tutored and tests are administered. Then on other Saturday is English, social studies, electives. Again, tests can be administered, so forth and so on. That then becomes an extended part of your school day. And if you miss those 10 or more times, you can be filed on for truancy as well under the Compulsory School Attendance Act. So the impact it's had, to get to that part, the impact that it's had is that school districts, A, can't keep up with the flood because of the new requirements. Number two, we find that districts are becoming districts of innovation. And it's allowing them to say, well, attendance just doesn't matter anymore. And so we're going to bypass it. And
I didn't read that in the districts of innovation.
Yeah, let me tell you, it's not. But they've utilized it.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it's interesting how they put things to work, isn't it? And so attendance just doesn't matter anymore. And so we're going to go ahead and bypass that. I had a dear friend of mine who's an associate principal, and he told me that 37% of his senior class should not have graduated high school. But because under the new laws and the way everything's worked, they had to graduate them and walk them across the stage. And I just shook my head. I said, this is unbelievable. That's the impact. Our dropout rate, you're going to see, it's not going to be immediate. It's going to be over over 5 years, is going to increase dramatically. Then you've got to look at, okay, what are we really identifying the dropout rate as, right? So now you got to look at withdrawn to homeschool. Your increase of withdrawn to homeschool is going to just skyrocket from the 15-16 school year, 5 years from that date, okay? Again, I get the inner workings, right? I get to see the cogs, and it blows me away that school districts are allowing people to, actually they're even being told, parents are being told, no, just don't withdraw him. Put down you're going to homeschool him. Well, he's going to go get a job. He's going to work. No, but just put down you're going to homeschool him. And that's what they're doing. And so you're going to see sharp increases withdrawn to homeschool, sharp increases to private school, sharp increases to charter schools. But then here's the kicker. You and I both know this.
They don't land there.
You better get on that campus, and you better spend a day on that campus for it to count as a day of attendance, that it then goes against that charter school, because otherwise you're stuck with that.
So
bad impacts, not good impacts.
And here's what, I don't know if you know this, or if you've correlated that like, let's use the 37% of the seniors. We now must monitor when kids graduate for 2 years, their post-secondary whatever, whether it's military, college,
trade school,
vocational. So those 37% probably are going to struggle in their next placement, whatever it is, whether it's work or college, or because they've been allowed to have those bad truancy habits.
Correct.
And so monitoring their success more than likely will not be pretty.
And again, I've told superintendents, and I've talked with, this isn't a local conversation. I've had this conversation with Round Rock ISD. I've had this conversation with charter schools in San Antonio. I've had this conversation with schools in Austin. I've had this conversation with schools in El Paso. They're all experiencing the same thing. Their attendance numbers are dramatically declining as a result, because they figured out, I don't have to go to school. I'm pretty okay with this. The judge can't do anything to me, so I'm cool. I don't have to go to school anymore. And there's nothing they can do about it, and they're going to pass me on anyways. So I've not been a fan. Now, another dramatic change is that in the old law, if a parent refused to attend a parenting class with a child that was at risk, then the court can hold them in contempt and put them in jail for 3 days.
Oh.
Okay? Now we can do it for any violation.
Okay. And how much are you doing that?
Not very often. Really, it's not fair, I guess, is what I'm told, because of where I'm at, but I get very good response. Even with the law changing, with all of the different things that I've done, the innovations I've put into place, trying to stay one step ahead of the teenager, and it is the teenager. Let me just tell you, it's like a whole block. Oh my gosh. And so to stay ahead of them, I'm still sitting at 97.8, 97.9% success of getting kiddos back into school. And a big part of it is the buy-in with the parents. And so we formulate that.
Talk a little bit more in depth about that, because you've done some innovative things that I would say that most truancy judges don't do. So
I think one of the biggest things is to go out and spend time with these kids away from the courtroom and away from the bench, and introduce these kids to a consistent, positive role model. Someone that's going to hold them accountable, that when they say they're going to do something, they do it, and they can count on what that person's going to say. One of the things that when I teach my parenting class, one of the things I say to parents, I ask them, I said, what is the single most important thing to a child? And of course, every parent defaults to love. More important than love. What's most important to a child?
Structure.
Safety and security. They want to feel safe. If they feel safe, they feel love, because you're going to take care of them. Now, I'm not talking about taking care of them by buying them cell phones, and I'm not talking about that. Yeah, that's not taking care of them. What I'm talking about is providing that safety where they feel like when they come home, they're safe. Electricity is going to be on. Hot water is going to be coming through the spigot. When they're sick, they know they're going to be taken to the doctor. That when they come home with a bad grade, they know there's accountability measures and you're going to follow through, and they can count on you. And I know it sounds crazy because kids will complain, oh, I can't believe you're grounding me. I want to be. But when it's all said and done, they look back and they go, I knew I could count on that. I knew that when you said it, it meant it, and that I could count on you. And I can't tell you how many kids at the end of truancy court come back and say, Judge Payton, you were mean, you were hard. He said, but you know what? You were always upfront with me, honest with me, and I knew that if you said it, you meant it, and you cared about me. And that's what a kid wants to feel, right? And so you have to be able to relate. Well, if I'm sitting on the bench all the time, how can I relate to these kids?
Right, especially the ones coming from poverty that are different ethnicity as you, because they're not looking at you thinking you're like me.
Right, and there's no trust factor. Mm-hmm. They don't know that I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. And there are some of them that get the personal story, which is far from the silver spoon in your mouth kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Same kind of at-risk stuff they went through is what I went through as a child with my own situation. So I started a community service program over 20 years ago. And it's not, let's go pick up trash on the side of the highway. It's, what can we do that creates a positive feeling in this child so they know that when they go to give to their community, they can make an impact. Picking up garbage isn't an impact. You're not learning anything. So I partnered with Habitat for Humanity immediately, picked up adults that would intern with me, and we would go out and spend time personally with those students at job sites, building a home for a family, explaining to them, this is why you're here. This is what you're doing. This is the impact you're going to make. Yeah, I know you're standing there thinking, oh, whatever, man. It's a Saturday morning. I'm early. What are you people doing to me? I hate you. But just give it a moment. These are the family members you're going to be helping. See what happens at the end of the day.
And you put a hammer in that kid's hand.
You bet I did. Put a hammer and nails. My best story is I had 3 girls from Plano Senior High School. They show up, and this is the funniest thing. They got their cute little Nikes on. They got their cute little ankle socks on, their cute little jogging shorts, and their cute little matching T-shirts, and they got their nails all done, and they're all make-uped up, and it's like 7:30 in the morning. And they show up, okay, we're ready for community service. Okay. So we do our thing, get ready. The site manager talks to the kids and talks to the other adults, and because it's a youth extreme build. And so they start pulling different groups to do different things. Well, this guy steps up and goes, I need 3 people to help me with the floors in this home. He was getting ready to cut and lay the floor in the house. Okay. And he goes, anybody want to volunteer? Well, nobody. I said, these 3 right here would love to volunteer with you. Really? You want to do that? Or do you want to go and do something that's not fun at all? Oh, no, we'll do. Okay, where are I? Those 3 broke nails. They got dirty. At the end of the day, they looked like they had been run through a course of some kind. They came back the next weekend, though, and they hunted that guy down before we even got started and made sure that they were his team. Got one better for you. We finished. Their community service was done. Next year comes around. They're not in truancy court. They've done what they're supposed to. They're seniors. All 3 of them, Judge Payton, can we volunteer with you? at the Habitat site, we want to do the floors again. Sure. So they did that. They did the floors with the guy again. The three of them went to the University of North Texas, started a business, 3 girls on a floor. And they did floors under 1,000 square feet. They acquired their materials from the Habitat stores from all the different areas, and they paid for their first year and a half of college with 3 girls on a floor, and they had money in their pockets.
Oh, man, that's a great story.
And then they ended up, I get goosebumps, and they ended up breaking up because one of them went to Florida, transferred to the University of Florida, and one stayed here, and I think one went to Austin College or something. Anyways, but the point is that you take kids that are in trouble, that are struggling, and you got to think of it from their perspective, right? Again, a kid doesn't come out of the womb saying, I can't wait to fail. I can't wait to be nothing. I can't wait to go to jail. They don't do that. And so you have to start understanding, okay, what's this kid thinking? My teacher's yelling at me. My principal's yelling at me. My parents are yelling at me. Everybody hates me. So why do I care? And so you've got to start to figure that out. You got to start to think, what can I do? Because you can't feed. Okay, I'm not going to give you a cell phone for skipping school. I'm not going to buy you a car for skipping school, right? So you take some of that negative, and you've got to figure out a way to let them work themselves into a positive. Another innovative idea that I came up with, which is you can't take away the accountability. You've got to be accountable, right? Because how else do you learn respect? Because you're not going to learn to respect. You're not respecting your education. You're not respecting who you are. You're not respecting your family's name when you don't go to school and take care of your business. So how do you teach them this without giving them the world and trying to say, well, it's okay, feel better as a trophy? Doesn't work that way. But if you can give them an opportunity to be angry, but see the light and then show them the path that they can walk down and then give them a little push, success is amazing. My success has been over 98.8% most of my career. And taking them and putting them in a position in a community service project where they can make an impact on somebody and they can see that impact, and then they step into it and they get into it, it changes their whole perspective because they've taken a negative and they've created a positive.
And I've been at meals with you in restaurants where people come up to you, kids come up to you and thank you again. They 5, 6, 10 years removed, and they still come up and say thank you.
Yeah.
So, and you only talked about one thing. I know that you have a greenhouse in Allen.
Yes, greenhouse in Allen, the farm in Allen. I mean, and we do a lot of things also within the campus that a lot of the campuses have now adopted. The daily progress report. Back when we were growing up, we had the Franklin planners. Mm-hmm. Okay, and Franklin planners were great ways to organize and structure yourself because you have to be responsible for yourself to your own schedule. Kids were never taught that. So I used I created a daily progress report, and the kids were required to get one every day, have their teachers fill it out every day, and then take it home at night and have a parent sign it every day and put it in a binder. And they had to bring it back to me. And essentially what I was teaching them was how to keep a daily planner. And I made them responsible for it. And the response has been amazing. Attendance goes way up because they know I've got to be there for that signature. Because if I don't get that signature, I'm in trouble. Attitude goes way up. Because guess what they don't want in writing? What don't we want a teacher to say about us in writing? Negative things. Sure. We want to see positive things. So it encourages me to work better because I want to see her put, you did an excellent job. I want to see him put, did a great job in class today.
So what else can schools do to help kids be successful so they don't necessarily have to come see you?
I think that a lot of it is taking the time, and you're doing that, right? Taking the time to sit down and understand that student. Now, of course, that requires time. Time is not easy, right? And so you've got to learn to put together activities for these students to be able to engage in, where it's a large group of students engaging with 1 or 2 adults, and that adult walking around and engaging with those kids. Not, here is your activity, and then I'm going to go sit in my chair over here, okay? Right. Which is the old school. Work on your own today. Instead of working on your own today, why don't we do an activity as a class today? Here's our activity. We're going to do this today. Whatever that activity is. Like I said, you're starting to do that when you sit down in your groups and you're finding out, how's everybody feeling today, right? That's an engagement. You're creating trust. And we want to trust our teachers.
That's been interesting. Like I said, we're in our 3rd year of restorative practice, which it's not only, it's building trust between the teacher and the student, but it's also retraining the adult brain to stop being so punitive. it's really, really hard to get adults to quit wanting to punish a student instead of understanding why the student may have acted that way and turning it into the harm that it's doing to the classroom community. But retraining that adult brain is half the battle.
It is. And here's the thing. We can't get confused. And this is what the new truancy law got confused with. We can't get confused with, let's not be in the mode of punishment all the time, and let's be in the mode of understanding what's going on, so we might be able to help work that student out of what they're in, to see a different way, to see a different light, to be positive in that environment, right? We can't confuse that, though, with when you have a consistent, blatant disregard for the law, for school policy, for school rules, for school best practices, then punishment is the only answer at that point. And I'm talking, I would see a kid, Becky, Dr. Good, pardon me, for 5 months, 2 to 3 times a month, before I would finally say, okay, look, there's nothing left I can do. And that's at 1.2, 1.3%, where I'm like, I have to hold you in contempt of this court. I've given you every opportunity. And that's what kids will tell you. I will give them every opportunity to get it right before I have to lower the boom. But at some point, sadly, that becomes what has to happen, but only at a rate of 1.2, 1.3%.
So what about that 1%? Do you have any numbers on those kids that you sent to jail? Did they come back to you later on and say thank you for that?
Oh, goodness gracious, yes. What we had figured out was we figured out that 68% of the students that I had seen and that I had sent to juvenile for a night or to the adult jail for 3 days came back, 68% came back and said, if it hadn't been for me sitting in that cell overnight, I would have never changed. You woke me up. You changed my life. And there's money in that. Because if I can stop the criminal justice system from growing by doing something as harmless, and what I mean by harmless is doesn't affect their record, doesn't stop them from getting into college, doesn't stop them from getting a job, none of that. But where they get to see, you know what, there is an end here. There is a finishing point that if I continue along these lines, there's somebody that's going to say no more. And I don't want to get to that point. It's like I tell kids, you know, when you're in school and you're put into ISS, that's like going to the city jail. If you get sent to the alternative school, that's like going to the county jail. And if you get sent to JJAEP, which is the Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program, which is normally housed in the Juvenile Detention Center, that's like going to a state jail prison. And if you get in so much trouble that you end up being placed in the Juvenile Detention Center, then you might as well be in the state penitentiary. And is that where you want to be as an adult? And when you can relate that to them, then they say, yeah, that's not where I want to be.
Well, you know, as time always flies when we're on these podcasts, and one of the things that we like to do at the end is give the participants an opportunity to ask me a question, the Ask Dr. Be Good show. So thank you for this fascinating look at your world, and you know what you've done for kids is phenomenal. You're retiring in November.
I am January.
January, okay.
January 1.
We have a little bit more time with you.
Yes.
Well, you're leaving some large shoes for somebody else. I don't envy whoever's following you.
Thank you, Dr. Good.
Yeah. So what question do you have for me?
Now, I've got a question I have to ask about the question.
Okay.
Because I was told it should be a fun question.
Oh, that
now
was
should it
somebody
be,
else's interpretation.
Now,
of
so
the
does it
question.
have to be education-based or can it be personal?
It can be personal. I've not had a personal, so hit me.
Okay, so here you go. I'm going to ask you a personal
Okay.
question, all right? What is your favorite ice cream?
Oh.
And does your favorite ice cream define you?
Here's what I say yes and no. Ice cream makes me sick. And it does define me in that I don't eat meat, wheat, corn, dairy, sugar products. And so it sort of does define me because I can't eat ice cream because it literally makes me sick. And so I will say that part of the reason why I'm able to function at the high level that I do, I don't know if most people understand how stressful a superintendent job can be in today's public education world. But I've not had a day off. I've not had to take a day off it'll be 7 years next month that I will be superintendent. And I can out-stamina most of my staff half my age. so sort of, yeah. You know, I won't say the ice cream, but the lack of ice cream defines me and my healthy outlook on life. So thanks for asking.
You're very welcome. I was told to make it fun, so.
Well, you gave me the opportunity, and my staff, when they hear this, are going to just roll their eyes and say, why did he do that? He gave her that opening to talk about what she, being
healthy.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm sort of big about that. But thank you. We, as always, want to thank anybody who takes the time to make a difference, because this type of thing will make a bigger difference than what you think. Because, as you were talking, I thought, you know what? All my staff needs to hear this. My campus leadership needs to hear this. This is information that is current truancy practice that we don't all know that. So we're going to use this not only as our podcast, but as a training piece as well.
Excellent.
So we're not going to lose that opportunity. We have too many kids who, in many ways, are being allowed to not take getting to school as seriously as we need for them to do and think and behave that way. We live in an interesting age of kids many times feeling they have the same rights and power as their parents. And so reminding kids and parents that there is a difference and it's okay to have that difference until they turn 18 is important. So thank you for coming and taking the time to speak to us. Like I said, we're going to use this not only for parent information, but staff information. It's that valuable.
Thank you for that.
Most welcome. Let me please leave us a review and leave us a 5-star rating if you liked what you heard. Share. This information, especially for anybody with school-age children, is priceless. Thank you, everyone. See you again next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Dr. Be Good show. For more information on Legacy Preparatory Charter Schools, visit our website, legacypca.com, or call 469-249-1099. And remember to like us on Facebook, where we stream live weekly Tuesdays at 3 p.m.